There is a moment that changes a cardiologist forever. Not the first surgery, not the first loss. It is the moment you stand across from a patient who followed the rules, took the pills, ate the salads, walked the neighborhood every morning before the sun came up, and you have to tell them it was not enough, because nobody told them what they were doing wrong in the very first hour of the day. Margaret was 68 years old, retired school teacher. She kept a gratitude journal. She did yoga on Sunday mornings and drank green tea because she had read somewhere that it was good for the heart. Her daughter had brought her in for a routine checkup, not because anything felt wrong, but because something felt slightly off. A mild tightness in the chest on cold mornings. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that made her think she was in danger. 3 days later, Margaret was in surgery. Her left anterior descending artery, the one cardiologists call the widowmaker, was 82% blocked. Not because of genetics, though those played a role. Not because of age alone, though the years had taken their toll. But because of a sequence of small, invisible, completely ordinary decisions she had been making every single morning for the better part of a decade. When she came out of recovery, the first thing she asked was not about her prognosis. She asked why. Why had no one ever told her that the way she started her morning was quietly accelerating her cardiovascular risk? Why had no one explained what was happening inside her body before she even reached for that first cup of tea? That question has stayed with me ever since. What follows is not a list of exotic risks. It is not a warning about rare conditions or unusual circumstances. It is a direct, honest look at 7 things that seniors do every single morning. Things so ordinary they feel invisible, that a cardiologist sees as warning signs. 7 mistakes that may be damaging your heart before 9 o'clock in the morning. Stay with me, because what comes next could change the way you live. Before getting into the list, there is something important to understand about who is delivering this information. The surgeon behind this knowledge has spent more than 3 decades inside operating theaters, more than 2,000 cardiac surgeries, valves replaced, arteries bypassed, hearts shocked back to rhythm in the middle of the night. He has held beating hearts in his hands. He has sat with families in waiting rooms and watched the clock. He has seen what the inside of a 70-year-old heart looks like when it has been quietly under stress for years, and he has seen what it looks like when someone has taken care of it properly. The medical system does a reasonably good job at treating heart disease after it happens. It does a poor job at explaining the daily habits that build up toward it. Prescriptions are easy to write. 15-minute appointments do not leave room for the conversation about what you do between 6 and 9 in the morning. That is the gap this information is meant to fill. Not a replacement for your doctor. A supplement to everything your doctor has not had time to tell you. Here is what nobody tells you. The cardiovascular system is profoundly time-sensitive. It does not experience all hours equally. The body after 60 operates in ways that are fundamentally different from the body at 30 or 40, and the morning hours represent the highest risk window of the entire day. Understanding why requires a brief look at what is actually happening inside you when you first wake up. Between roughly 4 in the morning and noon, the body experiences something called the morning surge. Cortisol rises, blood pressure climbs, the sympathetic nervous system shifts into a more active state. These changes are natural, evolutionary in origin, designed to prepare the body for the demands of waking life. The problem is that in a body over 60, those same shifts carry more weight. The arteries are less elastic than they once were. The blood tends to be thicker in the morning hours. Clotting factors are higher. The heart is being asked to do more work during the exact window when the risk of stress is already elevated. Think of it this way. A garden hose that is brand new can handle a sudden surge in water pressure without any problem. The same hose after 20 years of use, left in the cold, repeatedly pressurized and released, is a different story. The morning surge is that sudden pressure. And the habits layered on top of it, the choices made in that first hour, can either help the body navigate it safely, or they can amplify the risk dramatically. Research has consistently shown that more cardiac events occur in the morning hours than at any other time of day. Heart attacks, dangerous arrhythmias, strokes, they cluster in this window. That is not a coincidence. It is physiology. And it means the morning routine of a person over 60 is not simply a lifestyle preference. It is a medical variable. Write that down. Now to the 7 mistakes. The first mistake is getting out of bed too quickly. This sounds almost insultingly simple. But the cardiovascular consequences of abrupt positional changes in seniors are significant and well documented. When the body moves from horizontal to vertical rapidly, blood pressure has to adjust immediately to compensate for gravity pulling blood downward. In a younger person, that adjustment happens within seconds with minimal disruption. In a body over 60, those adjustment mechanisms are slower. The result is orthostatic hypotension, a sudden drop in blood pressure upon standing, which can cause dizziness, disorientation, falls, and in more vulnerable individuals can trigger arrhythmias in the morning hours when the heart is already navigating its highest risk window. Studies have found that orthostatic hypotension affects somewhere between 15 and 20% of seniors and is associated with significantly elevated risk of cardiovascular events. The fix is not complicated, but it requires intention. Sit on the edge of the bed for 60 to 90 seconds before standing. Let the legs dangle. Allow the circulation to begin redistributing. Breathe slowly. Give the cardiovascular system the runway it needs. Starting tonight, beginning tomorrow morning, this single change takes under 2 minutes and meaningfully reduces a genuine risk. The second mistake is skipping water. By the time you wake up in the morning, the body has been without fluid for 6 to 8 hours, sometimes longer. Blood viscosity increases overnight. The blood is literally thicker in the morning than at any other point in the day. And in a senior cardiovascular system, thicker blood means the heart has to work harder to push it through blood vessels that are already dealing with the demands of the morning surge. Dehydration in seniors is a chronic and underappreciated problem. The thirst mechanism becomes less sensitive with age, which means the body does not reliably signal when it needs fluids. Reaching for coffee first, or worse, skipping fluids entirely for the first hour of the day, compounds this problem. A glass of water, ideally room temperature or slightly warm, consumed within the first 15 minutes of waking, begins diluting the morning blood viscosity and easing the cardiovascular burden. Not a dramatic intervention, an extraordinarily impactful one. Here is what nobody tells you. The heart is fighting hardest at exactly the moment when most seniors give it the least support. Now, there is something critical that needs to be addressed before moving to the third mistake. Something that connects everything on this list. Because the third mistake builds on the second in a way that surprises most people. And it involves something almost everyone over 60 does automatically, without thinking, often within the first 5 minutes of being awake. The third mistake is reaching for the phone. This one generates more resistance than any other point in this conversation, and that resistance is itself part of the problem. The argument is always the same. It is just checking the news, just looking at messages, just a few minutes. But here is what is actually happening physiologically during those few minutes. The body is in its highest cortisol state of the day. The morning surge is underway. The cardiovascular system is managing elevated blood pressure and thicker blood in the transition from sleep to wakefulness. And into that already elevated stress environment, the brain is receiving an immediate input of information designed to produce emotional reactions, news, notifications, arguments and comment sections, messages demanding responses. Cortisol does not need help at this hour. It is already doing exactly what it is supposed to do, which is a great deal. Adding a screen-based stress input in the first 15 to 30 minutes of the morning is asking the cardiovascular system to process an additional autonomic response at the precise moment when it already has more than enough to manage. Blood pressure responses to psychological stress are more pronounced in the morning hours. The data on this is clear. The fix is equally clear. 30 minutes without the phone after waking. That window is not laziness. It is cardiovascular protection. The fourth mistake is eating a large, heavy breakfast immediately after waking. Here, the conventional wisdom fails seniors in a specific way. A large meal, particularly one high in refined carbohydrates and saturated fat, triggers a significant redistribution of blood flow toward the digestive system. The heart has to compensate by adjusting output. In the morning, when the cardiovascular system is already managing the morning surge, this additional demand creates a meaningful period of elevated cardiac workload. Research has identified what is called postprandial hypotension in seniors, a drop in blood pressure that occurs after eating as blood is redirected to the gut, which in vulnerable individuals can trigger lightheadedness, falls, and in more serious cases, ischemic events. This does not mean skipping breakfast. It means rethinking the timing and composition of the first meal. A lighter, protein-forward, lower glycemic breakfast consumed 30 to 45 minutes after waking, after the body has had time to hydrate and stabilize, places significantly less cardiovascular burden than an immediate large meal. Starting tonight, the plate does not need to be smaller. The timing and the contents need to be reconsidered. The fifth mistake is skipping morning medication or taking it at inconsistent times. This is not about forgetfulness in the abstract. This is about pharmacology, and the morning window specifically. Many of the most commonly prescribed cardiac medications, antihypertensives, statins, antiplatelet agents, have dosing schedules that are calibrated to the cardiovascular risk profile of the day. Taking a blood pressure medication an hour later than usual on some days and 2 hours early on others does not just affect the day's medication levels. It creates variability in cardiovascular protection during the highest risk window. Studies examining medication adherence in seniors with hypertension have found that inconsistent timing, not just missed doses, but irregular timing, is associated with worse blood pressure control and elevated event risk in the morning hours. A blood pressure that spikes unpredictably during the morning surge because medication timing is inconsistent is a quietly significant risk factor. The fix requires a system, not just a reminder. Medication at the same time every morning, within 15 minutes of the same hour, gives the pharmacology the consistency it needs to do its job. Write that down. The sixth mistake is skipping movement entirely in the morning. This is different from recommending aggressive morning exercise, which carries its own risks for some seniors. The distinction matters. Prolonged immobility in the morning hours, lying in bed for a long time after waking, sitting without moving for an extended period, contributes to the very vascular sluggishness that makes the morning window dangerous. Light, deliberate movement within the first 30 to 45 minutes of the day begins improving circulation, reducing blood viscosity through movement-induced changes in flow dynamics, and activating the parasympathetic nervous system in ways that counterbalance the morning cortisol surge. This does not mean running. It does not mean a full workout. For many seniors, it means a 5-minute walk around the house, gentle stretching, standing and moving through a few simple ranges of motion. The threshold is low. The benefit is real. The cardiovascular system responds to even minimal intentional movement in the morning in measurable ways. A senior who moves gently within the first hour of the day gives the heart a meaningfully different environment than one who remains seated and still until mid-morning. It is never too late to give the body what it is asking for. The seventh mistake is ignoring what the body says in the morning. This is the mistake that, in a cardiologist's experience, carries the most consequence, not because the symptom is dramatic, but because it is easy to explain away. The morning hours are when symptoms of cardiovascular stress most often appear. A mild heaviness in the chest, unusual fatigue upon waking that does not lift, shortness of breath while walking to the bathroom, an irregular sense of the heart beating harder than usual. These are not things seniors routinely report at appointments. They are things seniors chalk up to age, to a bad night of sleep, to stress, to the cold, to anything that makes them less alarming. Margaret's morning tightness had been present for 4 months before her daughter pushed her to come in. 4 months. She had attributed it to sleeping in an awkward position, to the dry winter air, to her age. Stay with me on this one, because this final mistake is the one that converts a manageable finding into a surgical emergency. The body speaks in the morning. The body after 60 speaks more quietly than it once did, but it speaks. The habit of listening, of noting morning symptoms, writing them down, reporting them even when they feel minor, is not hypochondria. It is informed self-advocacy. It is the single most powerful diagnostic tool a patient possesses. There is something that happens in the operating room that most people never think about. Behind those closed doors, while the surgeon is working, there are families in the waiting room. Spouses who have been married for 40 years, sitting in plastic chairs, staring at a clock, holding a cup of coffee they have not touched because they cannot think about coffee right now. Children who flew in from other cities overnight. Grandchildren who do not fully understand what is happening, but understand that something is wrong. The surgeon sees both worlds, the open chest on one side of the door, the vigil on the other. And in the years of work in that space, one thing has become undeniable. So many of those vigils could have been shorter or prevented entirely if someone had told the patient before things became critical what they needed to know. Ordinary habits, not exotic risks, not rare conditions. The morning routine, the glass of water, the 60 seconds on the edge of the bed, the phone left face down for 30 minutes, the medication taken at the same time every morning like a contract with the body, the light movement before the coffee has even finished brewing. The moment of pausing and actually listening to what the body says before dismissing it as nothing. These are not large interventions. They do not require equipment or prescriptions or appointments. They require awareness, and awareness requires information. That is the gap this conversation exists to fill. His name was Robert, 64 years old, retired electrician. He had been referred for a consultation after a routine stress test flagged an abnormality. His cardiologist at the time suspected a blockage but was not certain of the extent. What emerged in the pre-surgical evaluation was something that became a turning point in understanding morning habits. Robert had been waking up at 5:30 every morning, checking his phone within 2 minutes of opening his eyes, skipping water, taking his blood pressure medication at inconsistent times because he kept forgetting until after his first cup of coffee, and eating a large breakfast immediately after waking because he had always been told breakfast was the most important meal of the day. He had been doing every single one of these things, every morning, for years. And he had been doing them in good faith, believing he was fine, because nobody had told him otherwise. After his procedure, after a recovery that took longer than expected, he reduced from 4 cardiac medications to 2 over the following 18 months. His blood pressure, which had been chronically erratic in the morning hours, stabilized in a way his cardiologist described as remarkable for someone his age. When asked what felt different, Robert said something simple. He said he felt like he was finally working with his body instead of accidentally against it. That question, what changed, has stayed with me. So here is where this lands. 7 mistakes. 7 morning decisions that happen before most people have even checked the weather. Getting out of bed too quickly. Skipping water. Reaching for the phone. Eating too heavily too soon. Taking medication inconsistently. Avoiding movement. Ignoring what the body is saying. Number 1. Sit on the bed for 60 to 90 seconds before standing. Number 2. Drink a glass of water within 15 minutes of waking. Number 3. Keep the phone down for the first 30 minutes. Number 4. Eat lighter. Wait before eating large. Rethink the morning plate. Number 5. Medication at the same time every morning, every day. Number 6. 5 minutes of gentle movement within the first hour. Number 7. When the body speaks in the morning, write it down and report it. Now here is the question worth sitting with. Of these 7, which one did you recognize immediately? Which one made you think of a parent, a spouse, a friend? Leave that in the comments below. Not just a number, tell the story. Because the stories are why this conversation exists. Every comment is someone's morning being reconsidered. If you know a senior in your life who starts the morning the same way they always have, assuming it is fine because nothing has gone wrong yet, share this with them, not as a warning, as information. The kind of information that should have been in every 15-minute appointment but never quite made it through the door. And if this conversation is the kind you want to continue, if you want the honest, direct version of what cardiac health actually looks like in the years after 60, then subscribe. Because your heart has been working for you every single minute of every day you have been alive. It deserves someone in your corner who will tell you the truth. A final word, and this one is personal rather than medical. This information is shared by a surgeon who has spent decades on one side of an operating room door, thinking about the people on the other side. Nothing here replaces the guidance of your own physician, who knows your history and your specific risks in ways no video ever could. If any of the morning symptoms described in this conversation are familiar, the chest tightness, the unusual fatigue, the irregular heartbeat, please contact your doctor. It is never too late to make that call, and it is never too late to change the first hour of your day.